What up, Ho Biscuits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again. I got my hair recolored, just the ends. I just had to get the ends redone because I used Cantu, which just for all of my, black subs out there, don't use that shit. That shit has mad alcohol in it. They reformulated and now that shit is hella drying. It used to be like the best thing for my hair and it literally ended up being one of the worst. Like, dried my hair out, dried my scalp out, ruined my dye job, like a whole ass mess. But Hijinks, I used that on my hair like 2 weeks after I got it done, ruined the color, and so I finally got it recolored and I'm back to looking like a little space nebula for y'all. I really dig it. I really enjoy this. My hair is so big, and it's so healthy now, so I'm happy. I don't know what my next color is gonna be though, guys, because I don't know if my next color should be something festive like a dark green or something like super e-girl like a baby pink or baby blue or both. I could do both. That would be really cute. I'd have a cotton candy head instead of a galaxy head. Ooh, I like that. Hijinks, hope you guys are doing well. Make sure you let me know about your hair adventures down in the comments below. We are here to watch some more overly sarcastic productions. And keeping up with the times, they released a video called History Hijinks, The Plague, and I just really feel like we should watch that. I feel like we should. I feel like some of y'all need to revisit history and look at it because we in a mess, bruh. We in a whole ass mess and some of y'all don't even realize it. So that's what we're gonna watch today. Let's go ahead and get started. 3, 2, 1.
History can help us in a lot of ways. When we learn about the past, we use those lessons to help us in the present and yada yada yada, blah blah blah. But sometimes, for no particular reason, we just need a little escapism. Jumping
He been drinking. I've been drinking. I've been drinking.
Back to a simpler time to just enjoy the fun stories and cool civilizations without all the stress. So today we're gonna get 700 years away from all the worries of our modern world and instead talk about plague. God, what am I doing? Okay. To take a quick peruse through this foreign and exotic chapter in the story of our world and dispel a myth or two, let's do some history. Humans have seen a lot of plaguery throughout the ages, from the Plague of Athens to the Great Plague of Justinian to the Spanish flu to whatever the hell 2020 is doing. But right now we're going to zero in on the big one, the Black Death of 1347 to 1351. And in an attempt to not scratch too fiercely at the bottom of ye old plague content barrel, I'm going to take what is hopefully a novel angle on the subject. So I uncharacteristically won't be dallying too much on the effects in and around Italy. I know, such restraint. Venice, Genoa, and the other maritime republics practically feature as the protagonists of the early plague story because they carted it westwards, but we're going back a little further because our journey actually begins with the Mongols. In the 12 and 1300s, they stretched out from their East Asian homeland into roughly everywhere, and by the 1340s, they were on the doorstep of the last big city in the Black Sea, the Crimean port of Kaffa. The merchants in Kaffa worked for the Republic of Genoa and traded with the Mongols, so they were doing big business as a through port between Asia and Europe. This was a wildly lucrative operation, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. You've got lots of people handling large amounts of money and cargo, so sometimes disagreements happen, sometimes street fights happen, sometimes a Mongol gets killed in a brawl and the offending party runs behind the city walls for cover, and sometimes in this fully hypothetical scenario, the Mongol leader is so enraged that they decide to besiege the city about it. So in the rare event that this happens, Kaffa was a lot better off than most cities on the receiving end of Mongol wrath. Whereas they could typically obliterate any city that didn't simply roll out the red carpet for their new overlords, that strategy worked best against inland cities with no long-term defenses beyond thoughts and prayers. Kaffa, by contrast, was on the sea and could import supplies from Genoa all decade long to simply wait out the Mongols. The good news for Kaffa is that this worked, but the bad news is that this worked slightly too well. By 1345, the Mongols had been camped outside the walls for 2 whole years, and a batch of reinforcements had inadvertently imported, dun dun dun, the plague. Since its devastating first appearance in the 500s AD, Yersinia pestis had been a problem off and on in various parts of the world. Normally, these were fairly localized since long-distance travel is complicated, but after the Mongols reconstructed the Silk Road, an outbreak in China several years earlier had a much higher chance of crossing over to Western Asia and beyond. So when the besieging army started dying en masse, the Mongols cut their losses and gave up the siege. But before they left, they wanted Kaffa to share in their misery. So they used their trebuchets, not for their intended purpose of launching a 90-kilogram stone projectile over 300 meters, but to yeet the shit out of their plague-infested corpses. Now, germ theory was still several centuries out, so the Mongols' intent was likely just to make the city smell kinda bad, but what they accomplished instead was, bioterrorism. So this nightmarish scene of dead bodies literally raining from the sky and piling into mountains of corpses had the added effect of plague stuff. And for the people of Kaffa, who remained totally chill through the past 3 years of siege, this is what finally made them bounce. Unfortunately for everyone in a 2,000-mile radius, these getaway boats made some stops. Constantinople, Alexandria, Sicily, Marseille, northern Italy.
Oh my god, so it was the Mongols' fault! Ah, you dirty, magnificent, warlike bastards.
And then everywhere else. But ultimately, when the medieval world was so interconnected both over land and by sea, it was only a matter of time before the already active plague made its way west, Kaffa or otherwise. So with the disease making its way through the world, and again, I know it's hard to insert yourself into this 14th century perspective, but just try and suspend your disbelief for the sake of the history. Let's take a look at how it got around. The problem for containment was that nobody knew how it spread, so nobody quite knew how to stop it. Later epidemiologists in the 1890s figured out that the disease was carried by fleas hitchhiking on rats, but our 1300s pals figured the cause was somewhere between an imbalance of the four humors and the good old-fashioned wrath of God. And at first, treatment wasn't much more refined, with responses ranging from, "Oh no, it seems that you have contracted Big Dead. You should pray about it," or something, to going full-on Amontillado and bricking up sick houses. But in 1348, Ragusa and several other Italian ports began requiring all incoming sailors to stay outside the city for 30 days to stop asymptomatic carriers from inadvertently causing a mess. And one Italian city, who shall not be named, but you know who, bumped those rookie numbers up to 40 days, called a quarantino. It didn't entirely stop yon plague from barging in, but even a basic awareness that transmission is...
I don't know what city it is. Is it Rome? I'm just guessing that it's Rome, but if it's not Rome, I'm gonna be sad.
The thing helped with the containment. All told, this was a pretty bad time for the densely urbanized and interconnected cities of Europe, but we can't forget that this outbreak started in China, and they didn't just stop having the plague when everybody's focus shifted to Europe after 1347. In the decades following the first wave, the Mongol Yuan dynasty suffered debilitating power vacuums and loss of workforce that caused massive famines and eventually led to full-on rebellions. In 1368, the dynasty collapsed and got replaced with the Ming. The plague also sped up imperial turnover in Anatolia, where the Byzantine Empire cities, which at this point were not especially numerous, but still, quickly became hotspots after the initial infection of Constantinople. And so a small group of horseboys, who were previously just a minor annoyance, capitalized on the opportunity to conquer far outside their homeland. And in just a couple decades, these Ottomans had yoinked huge chunks of Greece and Anatolia with relative ease, and effectively put Constantinople under house arrest. Despite the various domino effects of imperial collapse, there were a few cities, communities, and even countries that managed to tuck and roll through the first wave. At the far northern edges of the world, so far north in fact that I maybe needed to use a different map projection, were Iceland and Finland, who were so isolated from Mediterranean and mainland European trade that they were able to avoid the plague for half a century and benefited from decades-long recovery periods in between successive waves. For a more erroneous example, if you've ever looked up the Black Death online, you might have stumbled onto this map that shows a huge blob of Poland as being completely fine. So there's this myth that Poland, for justifications ranging from low population density and little outside trade to they liked cats, just dodged the plague, or at least had it way easier than the rest of Europe. This partly owes to the extreme slimness of primary sources and some aggressively revisionist narratives from communist-era Poland. But 20th century communism is a totally different kind of plague, so we're gonna leave that one be and focus back on the medieval world, where the reality is that Poland was bordered by plague in every direction, so let's not kid ourselves, it got hit.
Yeah, they had the plague, for sure.
Oh no, Cleo's on the next page of my script. Oh no, I can't wake her up. I mean, I don't know how I haven't been waking her up by talking right now, but ooh.
Look at Cleo.
Sorry fam, that's the end of the video. But even in country...
Oh, she was so cute. What a cute little kitty. not to be extreme or anything, but I would die for Cleo.
Where we know the pestilence was popping, some people benefited from just tidying up. Take the city of Nuremberg, which had some of the best public health measures in Europe. They maintained over a dozen public bathhouses, streets were paved and cleaned, and garbage had to be disposed outside the city walls instead of outside your window, which meant corpses were likewise carted out quickly and cleanly. And some Jewish communities had similar results, with various ritual purifications helping to keep them and their houses squeaky clean and unappealing to the caravans of city-hopping rat tourists making their way across Europe.
Sorry, this said,
clean and unappealing to.
Of course, many Christians decided plague was actually some big Jewish conspiracy and proceeded to torture the Jews about it. A lot. List of things I didn't know about the plague. Are you fucking kidding me?
The caravans of city-hopping rat tourists making their way across Europe. So there are some rare cases of rolling a nat 20 on a plague save this first go-round, but most of society got pretty uniformly clobbered by this whole thing. A rat 20, if you will. Soon enough, the plague's first wave burnt itself out and Europe staggered back to normality, except... here's the fun part, it came back. Often. About once every other decade, new waves of plague came crashing back in with new epicenters each time. Luckily,
Jesus.
and in an encouraging twist of fate, people started getting wise to how this worked and how to stop it. Widespread use of quarantines, dedicated plague hospitals, straight-up stay-at-home orders, and, of course, the plague doctor. Now, contrary to what various media, such as Assassin's Creed, would have you believe, the archetypical plague doctor didn't come into being until as late as the 1600s. The original suit, designed by Charles Delorme, featured a full-body covering with a beaked leather mask filled with perfume to keep out those dastardly bad airs which were thought to cause the plague. But this mask is a little rudimentary and not very advertiser-friendly. And it wasn't until a century later, when plague was largely in the rearview mirror, that Delorme's design was fancied up and aesthetic to all hell by way of the Italian Commedia dell'arte and Venetian Carnevale masks, which is where we get the beak chic that we all love. So despite the fact that plague was Rick Stevesing its way over Europe for 3 straight centuries, it was only after the rats' returns to their day jobs that the plague doctor as we know him was born.
Rudimentary plague doctors were active during 17th century outbreaks, but they were barely trained, mostly served as death counters, and didn't look spooky. Okay.
After the rats' returns to their day jobs that the plague doctor as we know him was born. And that's a quick rundown of the barrel of laughs that is the Black Death. And while I could say more because there's always more plague to discuss, am I right? I'm calling it here because the last few months have been a time and your boy just needs a nap. So stay safe, read up on some plague history, and make like our friend Il Medico by wearing your goddamn mask.
Thanks, Blue. I really enjoyed that. It really actually was, I feel like, a really unique take on the whole plague thing. A lot of people cite the bubonic plague and talk about the bubonic plague, but they very rarely talk about like where it came from and stuff like that. So I really thought that was super interesting. I didn't know it was the Mongols' fucking fault. What the fuck, guys? Genghis? Mr. Khan? Hello? Kublai? Could you not? Anti-Husin, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave your reaction suggestions and requests down in the comments below. And other than that, peace out, Ho Biscuits. It's getting lit.